There it goes. All right, travelers. Well, welcome to the Speed Traveler F1 Deep Dive. I'm Chris Evertson. That's Charlie Frank. And Charlie, this episode really wasn't supposed to start for another couple weeks for the opening of the F1 season, the Formula One racing season. But we had to kind of do a show now because there's just so much big news in F1. But before we dive into that, Charlie, why don't you talk a little about what we do?
Yeah, well, the Speed Traveler has been going for years, and Chris and I are both race car drivers, race car driving instructors, and that's basically our full-time job as we take people to the racetrack and we work with manufacturers. Really a lot of fun. But we've been doing the Speed Traveler Roadshow, and part of the Speed Traveler Roadshow that's been on all the podcast networks and local radio is about buying and selling cars, classic cars, exotic cars, travel, and then we talk about F1. And what we were finding is people were really into the F1 content and asking lots of questions. So there you have it. The Speed Traveler Formula One Deep Dive is coming to you now for the first time. It came a couple of weeks early, but there was amazing news in F1, wasn't there, Chris?
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, the deep dive starts early. I mean, it's been a whole off season of non-news, headlines, right, but non-news, and then all of a sudden in this past week, over the course of 2 days, 2 bombshells, and we're going to focus on one of those bombshells right now. And that is the big news of Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion driver, currently racing for Mercedes and will race the 2024 season for Mercedes. But in 2025, he's off to Ferrari. He's off to the Scuderia.
Yeah, and this rumor, well, it's actually fact now, but it started in rumors back at Monaco 2023. John Eklund, who's the CEO or the chairman of the parent company of Ferrari, had been keen to get Hamilton on board for quite a while. So there was a little rumor at Monaco that those guys were seen talking. And but then what happened is Hamilton signed his 2-year extension there, so that kind of squashed it. But it's interesting that this has its roots back in Monaco, May of last year.
Yeah, and you and I talked about this privately, amongst our friends, and we were like, "There's no way this ever happens. There's no way Lewis Hamilton puts on the red jumpsuit and races for Ferrari." I mean, I could see him maybe going to some other teams, back to McLaren, what have you, but certainly not in the Ferrari. And here we are. He's going to be in the Ferrari in 2025. And you mentioned the contract renegotiation that he had, or extension. He had a 2-year extension. And a key part of that contract was Lewis Hamilton was given an out clause by the powers that be at Mercedes, whether Toto Wolff or the other contract negotiators. But Lewis Hamilton had an out clause, which he is now exercising to move on to Ferrari.
Yeah, it's really crazy. And apparently, I don't think Mercedes was totally anticipating this announcement. I mean, Lewis had been there basically his whole career, so he must have given him a little advance notice, but they didn't seem to have much advance notice because they didn't have a press release ready to go. So that's pretty crazy that this sort of got dropped on him. And you just wonder what the feeling's going to be like inside the team through 2024.
Yeah, well, I mean, does George Russell give way to Lewis Hamilton on track? Who's going to be the number 1 driver at Mercedes next year? Who's going to take over the seat that Lewis Hamilton is vacating? Does George Russell stay with the team and become number 1? Or does he stay with the team and become number 2? Stay number 2? Or does he leave the team as well? I mean, there's a lot of speculation that we can throw out there now just on the Mercedes team alone.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if I'm George Russell, Lewis Hamilton who is my mindset in the race car. When I'm in the race car, Lewis Hamilton who? I'm here for the championship, and that's just another guy on the grid.
Yeah. This is.
But I'm a hard liner like that. I mean, like when we're racing, we race pretty well together. But when a win is on the line, Charlie Frank who? Is he that guy that I just pushed off the side of the road?
Yeah, you're gonna hear. Yeah, this is Toto. Lewis, you need to pull over. You need to let George by.
And, I think we're going to hear the famous words from Valtteri Bottas just ring clear. And, something along the lines of forget you, Toto.
Yeah, but what's crazy about this one announcement, it's funny, one chip falls, and look what it does to all the other seats in Formula One. I mean, Charles Leclerc signed a big contract, which has not been disclosed, which is interesting. It's rumored to be through 2026 and worth $50 million a year, which is, in my opinion, that's a whole other subject, but it seems like a lot for a guy who hasn't won a championship yet. But getting back to that, so Leclerc's not going anywhere. So what happens now? You've got Carlos Sainz kind of in limbo. So he's going to be driving pissed this year, isn't he?
Yeah, well, you keyed on two things that are key to this Ferrari aspect. Actually, and there's a third one we'll bring up in a moment. But Charles Leclerc, okay, now knowing how does this change his mindset driving in 2024? Right. I guarantee you between Charles and Carlos Sainz, again, I just mentioned with George and Lewis, they're not going to adhere to any team orders. I mean, if I'm Carlos Sainz, you're leaving the seat. You're driving for yourself. I'm driving for myself in that case. I would be driving for myself. Absolutely. I'm not going to let team orders dictate whether I come in first or second or what have you. And also from Charles Leclerc's side of things, it's kind of, how does he feel about this? I mean, I know he's going to put up a good front, but he's number one driver this year. Does this mean when in 2025, when Lewis Hamilton joins the team, he's now the number two driver for the team? Yeah. And everyone says, oh, there's no team orders. No team orders. That's just a load of BS. There's always team orders.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Hamilton does with two equal number ones in theory, how both of them do for that matter. And don't forget that Frederic Vasseur, one of our favorite people to imitate on the Speed Traveler, because he has such a distinctive French accent. He is now reunited with Lewis Hamilton. They won a championship together in 2006 in the ART Formula 2 team. So you have to imagine that Frederic is ecstatic that he's got someone that can win championships coming over. And Leclerc is certainly fast, but he hasn't won a championship yet.
And he's going to drive like he hasn't won a championship yet, which means he's going to be very, very aggressive. And, that was the third point. Frederic Vasseur being the team boss over there at Ferrari and this reunification between he and Hamilton. I mean, I think that's the only reason this really happens. I mean, if it's Binotto back in Ferrari, there's no way Lewis Hamilton comes to Ferrari. But right. with Frederic Vasseur there, that is a great rejoining of the family, if you will. And it speaks to volumes of Frederic's power in the Formula One peloton, if you will, or the family. And Lewis Hamilton, them rejoining, I think it makes for a very powerful team. And that relationship, that connectivity, is going to prove challenging for Charles Leclerc. And it's going to be a very, very challenging season for both those teams. And I think all the other teams are just going to sit in the woodwork and just kind of laugh and have a good time with it.
Right. So let's talk about some of the implications of that. So now we've got Carlos, who's basically going to be a free agent. After this year, you've got Perez as a free agent. So what do you think of Carlos Sainz moving over to RB? I mean, I'm sure that's what a lot of people are thinking today with this news hitting.
Well, to predict the future 12 months from now, it's a very reasonable assumption that Carlos Sainz could take that seat from Perez. I believe his contract is up at the end of the 2024 season anyways. Yeah. So, I mean, Checo Perez is driving for a seat, and he's going to drive no holds barred. So that battle between he and Max Verstappen at the Red Bull team is going to be very interesting. So it's very plausible, depending on what kind of season, almost regardless of what kind of season Checo has, it's very plausible that Carlos Sainz takes that seat away from him. So it's going to be, that's a very good landing spot for him in the Formula One ranks. There's also the possibility he's out of Formula One.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, no one else seems to want to be able to give up a ride. I mean, I
Right.
mean, and Carlos Sainz isn't want to go to one of the other teams that isn't performing as well. And I don't see Lando Norris or Oscar Piastri leaving their seats or being
No,
kicked out of their seats for
no.
Carlos Sainz.
Yeah,
Where else can he possibly go?
yeah. Those
Does
guys.
he switch seats and go to Mercedes?
Yeah, those.
That's the only open seat.
Yeah, that's a good point. That does open a big seat up at Mercedes. If Perez moves on, there's another seat there. So yeah, it's really interesting how one big contract, can completely jumble up everything and it's going to be a crazy silly season starting in Monaco this year for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the silly season starts, the 2024 off-season silly season starts right now,
Yeah,
as a result of this announcement.
yeah.
And, it's interesting. I read an article, and I can't speak to its validity, and I forget, what was Lewis Hamilton's physiotherapist's name? Cullen, Angie Cullen.
Yeah,
Um, Apparently, she was seen talking with a lot of folks at Ferrari just a short few weeks ago. I mean, she left Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes team at about the middle of the season for undisclosed reasons. I guess she wanted to go out and have some fun or what have you.
right.
But I don't know. Maybe she left the team in advance as a negotiating tool for Lewis Hamilton to be a go-between between he and Ferrari. And it looks like she might actually be on the Ferrari team as well. And, I mean, I'm throwing darts in the air here, but this is what the silly season's all about.
This is what the silly season's all about. And it gave the Speed Traveler Formula One deep dive something to talk about, which is great. And another thing, Chris, is we are going to touch on this. We're going to come back and do a complete show on this, but we have to tease it a little bit. And that was the Andretti Global team sort of got snubbed by FIA, which is interesting. Definitely got snubbed by the other Formula One team.
Charlie. Sort of got snubbed. I mean,
Yeah.
on the side of the screen right now are two fingers pointed straight in the air, and that's what Andretti got from Formula One.
Yeah,
He got they got the big adios, and I feel bad because I was excited about the idea of Andretti getting back into the Formula One ranks. His father, Mario Andretti, 1978 Formula One world champion.
right.
The infamous trade of Nigel Mansell and Michael Andretti. What was that? 93 at McLaren.
Right.
When Michael Andretti came to McLaren, and then Nigel Mansell went to IndyCar, went to the Newman Haas, I believe it was,
Right.
racing team, and won the IndyCar championship. Did Nigel Mansell that year? And plus all the infrastructure that the Andretti team has built. And we're going a little deeper on this, I think, we really meant to, but I feel horrible for the Andretti team, the crew, the family, everything about it, because I was excited about it. And I think you and I both agree, very short-sightedness from our opinions on Formula One to kick the Andretti name and the Andretti team by the wayside.
Yeah, and if you like, this is what the Speed Traveler is all about. The Speed Traveler Formula One deep dive is that if you like some different perspective, if you're a Formula One fan, we ask that, and you're from America, feel free to share this with your buddies here, because it's nice to have a perspective from this side of the pond. Sometimes you get the same perspective with all British announcing team. You kind of have a slant, and that's what the Speed Traveler Deep Dive Formula One is all about, is having a little bit different perspective. They're probably not going to go too deep into the Andretti thing, but we can do it here. We're going to do it in a subsequent show. So keep an eye out for the Andretti show. It's going to come out in the next couple days.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what do you think, Charlie? Should we cut this one short? Andretti will be our next episode on the deep dive. We'll go right into the Formula One testing, and then Formula One's first race of the longest season in Formula One history.
Yeah, we're going to be very, very busy this summer. Part of the other things that'll be really cool with upcoming in the Speed Traveler Deep Dive Formula One is we're going to be going to locations and recording this live. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but we will be doing shows with a live audience, and we'll be recording them. We'll edit them a little bit, and then we'll put them right out there. But that's going to be really fun this year. I'm looking forward to going to the Peterson Auto Museum and some of those great places, and we're going to let you know how you can get involved. But to that point, please hit us up if you've got any questions and you've got comments and you think Chris is an idiot for his comment about, or you think I'm a moron, and that's fine. You can, and you think we don't know Formula One from the back end of Donkey. That's fine, but let us know on the Speed Traveler Instagram page or our YouTube page. You can check out all of our videos, all of our other recordings there.
That's it. Thank you so much, Charlie. I'm Chris Everton. This has been the first episode of the Formula One Deep Dive, brought to you by The Speed Traveler. Check us out on the YouTubes and the Instagrams at The Speed Traveler, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys at the next show.